Alrighty everyone, welcome back. It is now the middle of February of 2023, and we are just a couple of weeks out from the first episode of The Mandalorian Season 3, which debuts on March 1st. That's really going to be the starting point for Jon and Dave's new Star Wars universe that's going to kickstart throughout this year into, of course, 2024 to really set things up and bring things in motion. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future Star Wars updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. Now, the thing about all of these different projects is that we have two of which that are being led by Kathleen Kennedy, that of course being Skeleton Crew and the Acolyte series. We got Skeleton Crew coming out this fall, with the Acolyte coming out sometime in the spring of 2024, so that's got a little bit of ways to go, since they've had so many setbacks and issues behind closed doors. Now that brings us to the biggest production issue that Kathleen Kennedy has been putting herself into, and that has a lot to do with Skeleton Crew as a series, and specifically what she recently did and authorized that really betrays George Lucas, Jon, Dave, and even some of the fan-favorite characters in the entirety of the Skywalker saga. So let's dive right into all of this. Now, we know specifically that Skeleton Crew is a very complex show. It is considered a Mandoverse-era project, so it does take place a couple of years after the events of Return of the Jedi. Specifically at what point is still a big mystery. We're not quite sure if it takes place before Mando Season 1, or if it takes place after Mando Season 3, or somewhere in between. We're not quite sure about that just yet. Other than the fact that it will involve aspects of a new partition of the galaxy called the New Beyond, as well as other elements of throwing in some new villains as well. Now, with that being said and all, what's very concerning is what Kathleen Kennedy recently initiated. With many new Star Wars TV shows in the works between both Favreau and Filoni, Kennedy is currently focused on Skeleton Crew and the Acolyte series. However, she has been running into many issues as of late for the upcoming shows, especially with Skeleton Crew that recently involved a disastrous situation that caused more drama between Kennedy, Lucas, and even Favreau and Filoni. Further, it's noted that recently a major scene was deleted and cancelled from the Skeleton Crew series that involved a very popular character. One scene in particular involved Luke Skywalker coming across the children and Jude Law's character, who was a teacher and protector of them from the Knights of Ren. Now, this scene in particular involved Luke facing the Knights of Ren, who wield lightsabers in this actual moment. This entire moment was accepted between George Lucas and Kennedy a year ago, and involved Luke saving the children from the Knights of Ren. Now, let me just pause here for a second. Now, we know that Jon and Dave are already doing something very similar for Mandalorian Season 4, where it is going to involve the character Ren, the Knights, and a young Ben Solo being protected by Luke. That's already pre-planned for Mando 4, so this scene in particular is very similar, but it was cut by Kathleen Kennedy for obvious reasons, because it's Luke Skywalker. I mean, what else, what other kind of excuse is she really gonna have? Now, we know that everything related to Skeleton Crew has been a very, strict, complex production by Kathleen Kennedy and of course John Watts, by the way, who was also involved. But we also know that this one in particular was going to basically be giving the Knights of Ren a brand new image, giving them a new purpose in the Star Wars canon. We all know that J.J. Abrams originally wanted to give the Knights lightsabers, and also in The Rise of Skywalker that Kathleen Kennedy did not want that to actually be a thing, and tossed that to the wayside. So now what they're doing is basically, this is what Jon and Dave, including George Lucas, wanted to do in Skeleton Crew, and they got it approved by Kathleen Kennedy to have her and John Watts do this. And this, by the way, was a gesture by John Watts, because Watts is a good friend, believe it or not, to Jon Favreau. The two Johns, right? So, when you look at it like that, in that respect, this really is a very complex scenario, because you have two good friends, John Watts and Jon Favreau, realizing that Kathleen Kennedy deleted something that was approved and pretty much settled on between herself and George Lucas that was really going to make Luke Skywalker shine, and was also going to reinvent the Knights of Ren, giving us a brand new iteration of those characters, so to speak, at an earlier time, well before the events of The Force Awakens. So, moving on to the next thing here. Further, it was planned to involve Mark Hamill, who first quit from the series. By the way, yes, he was involved in Skeleton Crew until Kennedy got somebody else to replace Luke, and that this is where the scene plans began to crumble. Luke was going to appear just as he did in Boba Fett, however held a different hairstyle that was slicked back more, an homage to the New Jedi Order books and their covers. Kennedy also decided at last minute to cut Luke Skywalker fighting the Knights of Ren, and instead is currently replacing the scene with a brand new Force wielder who protects the children fighting off pirates instead, trying to steal pieces from their Skeleton Crew ship on a jungle-like world at nighttime. George Lucas did not take this very well and got into an argument with Kennedy about breaking their agreement. Now, once again, guys, not a big surprise to me. This is something that always happens strictly with Kathleen Kennedy. It seems like she's got something against Luke Skywalker. The thing that always confuses me, though, however, why even accept or agree to bring Luke on a show that you know you're going to eventually cut and or delete later on? I don't really know what that's all about. I don't know what that game really is that's being run by Kathleen Kennedy. I don't know if that's being done on purpose or what, but who knows. The thing about this that really stands out to me the most also is how she also cut out the Knights of Ren. You would think at minimum, of all people, like Kathleen Kennedy would want a sequel trilogy reference in Skeleton Crew, but I guess not, which is pretty surprising. I'm pretty, stumped on that. So, we are getting something like this, thankfully, in Mando Season 4, where Luke actually protects a young Ben Solo against the Knights of Ren, and Ren himself. Ren is a separate villain, he's not Kylo Ren. This is in the Rise of Kylo Ren comics that's going to become live-action form in Mando 4. It's a very brief and short and sweet scene, but it is going to happen in Mando 4. It's been storyboarded, it's been finalized to be used in the script, a lot of concept art was already illustrated for it all. That's basically going to be the new big cameo for Mando 4, a young version of Ben Solo. So, the thing about this too that I think a lot of fans are going to have issues with is the fact that they're replacing this with pirates. So, instead of the Knights of Ren, it's going to just be typical, bland pirates that have very primitive-like weapons that are going against this Force user. Now, we're not quite sure, by the way, if this Force user is a Jedi, is it just a person that is very strong with the ways of the Force? We're not quite sure about that just yet. We're not even quite sure if this Force user uses a lightsaber this time around, unlike what they were gonna do with Luke facing the Knights in Skeleton Crew. So once again, this fits directly in with all the recent cuts and reshoots and all the like for Skeleton Crew. Anyways, guys, fill me in below in the comments what you guys have to say about all of this, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Night to moon, we hear them moans again.